The questions would be taken after Ms. Riva's address. I request the audience to write the question in the question slip that is given to you at the time of registration and hand it over to our volunteers. Now I request Ms. Riva Ganguly Das, former Consul General of India in Shanghai and currently Joint Secretary, Public Diplomacy, Ministry of External Affairs, to address us. Ms. Riva Ganguly Das.
Good morning, Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Parekh, Ambassador Gopinathan, a very distinguished gathering here. We, on behalf of PD Division, I must say we are extremely glad to collaborate with SPIPA and PAN IIT to organize this event. This is part of our outreach event basically to communicate issues of Indian foreign policy, to have a better understanding. We feel in today's world, public diplomacy is a very important part of our work, and this is part of that effort. I have a presentation which has a lot of statistics. I'm not going to dwell much on the statistics. I'm going to give a quick overview of trade business relations. Essentially, I'm going to speak from my experience as the Consul General in Shanghai, which is really the hub of business in China. Many of you here have met me in Shanghai. There have been 2 delegations from Gujarat in the last few years. One was in Shanghai in June. A big Gujarat delegation was in Shanghai. We had the Chief Minister visited Shanghai, and I had the great pleasure of taking him around to show him some of the infrastructure projects, because I feel there is much we can learn from there. And many of you are practitioners of what I'm going to talk about, so bear with some of the very general information, and I'm sure you people know much more about the market than I do. I'll first start with a little overview of trade, and because China has since 2008 emerged as our largest trading partner. Go to that. Our trade last year was 73.9 billion US dollars. Our next trade target is 100 billion US dollars for 2015. Each and every trade target that we have set in the past, we have always met it before time. This year, I have a slide later on the trends. So we are hopeful that the trade target of 100 billion US dollars will be met by 2015. This is a very big change, because this change has come about only in a matter of 10 years, that trade has boomed to such an extent. At the turn of the century, the total trade was a couple of billion, and now monthly trade is a few billion US dollars. With Shanghai alone, one city, trade was 5 billion US dollars last year. So we are talking about massive numbers here. You see the export-import figures. The growth is almost same, what we are exporting and what we are importing, but obviously China is starting with a larger base. So the value, in terms of value, Chinese exports are much more. We import much more from China, which results in the trade deficit, which was 27 billion US dollars last year. And this is really one of the reasons of great concern. The trade deficit is almost equivalent to what we are actually able to sell to China. So we need to look at it in terms of diversifying our export basket, adding more value-added products. The next slide is about the trends in 2012. Because of the decrease in iron ore exports, which is up to 50%, the trade has shown a decline of 8%. These are mid-year figures. The rest of the year figures are yet to come, and hopefully the trade will recover over a period of time. But the next slide will tell you why iron ore has such a huge impact. Iron ore consists 45% of our total trade. As much as 45% of what we are selling to China is actually iron ore. So if there is an order internally on iron ore mine banning or whatever, it immediately impacts the trade. Also, the iron ore costs have been going down, which has had an impact on trade. Cotton yarn, again, I think of interest to Gujarat, is about 20% of the total top exports of India to China is actually cotton yarn. So you see, it is really raw materials that we are selling to China. The next item that I've listed here is copper. Again, a product in which we have seen more than 100% increase. Precious stones is the previous one. Precious stone is again of interest perhaps to people in Gujarat. Diamond, we are fourth largest exporter of diamond to China. We come after Japan, South Africa. And our share is 4%. I think we can do, even though we've increased huge, there have been a huge 43% increase last year. But the trade actually goes through only the Shanghai Diamond Exchange. The trade it's a very controlled trade. You cannot bring in diamond through any port. You have to get diamond. You have to register yourself in the Shanghai Diamond Exchange. Diamond is traded only through the Shanghai Diamond Exchange. It's a very complex procedure through which diamond trading is done, and at the end of the day only 4% duty is paid. So it's a good business. Indian traders are benefiting from it. Almost 20 traders are extremely active, largely from Gujarat and Rajasthan, in Shanghai at the Diamond Exchange. But a lot of people also find it more lucrative to export through Hong Kong, because it's easier to do business in Hong Kong, being a free port. Another product of great potential is colored stones. Again, would be of interest to Gujarat, I guess, more for Rajasthan. The duty structure is 40%, which is a great dampener, and businessmen are not interested in 40% duty. To pass on 40% duty on such a high value product to the customer is something which is which our businessmen have not really explored. But we find that more and more in jewelry exhibitions, in other such exhibitions, there are more and more Indian traders who come and who are exhibiting gold jewelry, silver, and our extremely good work in precious stone, because we are the sort of world leaders in precious stone. So that is really an area where if we are able to sort of, we talk to the Chinese a lot for reduction of customs, the duty structure there is VAT and customs, etc., which all leads up to about 40%. That is an area of great potential. What we are buying from China is the usual thing that usual items that they sell to the rest of the world: nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, power equipment. A large amount of power equipment comes from China. We are the sixth largest importer of machinery from China. We are the sixth largest importer. Organic chemical, again, antibiotic. We are the largest buyer of antibiotics from China since 1999. We buy huge quantities of antibiotics from China, and we also sell antibiotics to them. Fertilizer is an important item. We have about 7% share of China's total fertilizer imports, and these are the mainly machinery and telecom equipments. This is what sort of dominates our basket. The next slide. Though China is our largest trading partner, we are China's 11th largest trading partner, so we come much below. And when you see these statistics, you'll see that the percentage share of our trade is actually very low. It's very small, and there is definitely scope to increase that. If you compare us with the rest of the world, again, we are very small compared to what China is doing with the rest of the world. And China's trade with US, Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea is, in terms of volume, in terms of value, is much more than what we are doing. Though usually we talk about the balance of trade and China having most of the world having a negative balance of trade with China, but with all its eastern neighbor, China itself has a negative balance of trade. So with Japan, Korea, and Taiwan, China buys much more products from them than it is able to sell, and it is largely high precision, value added items which come. These are some facts which I think most people know of. I mean, I just put this slide for a greater understanding of the magnitude of what we are dealing with. The challenges that there are some, the next slide. Challenges, of course, market access concerns. Indian industry, except a few companies which have traditionally been sourcing from China, they realize the potential and they go into China. The Indian industry is only just beginning to take interest. Pharmaceutical, IT, agriculture, engineering goods are all items where we feel there is a lot of potential, particularly pharmaceutical, because China has an aging population. They need cancer drugs, they need drugs for cardiovascular diseases, they need drugs for stress-related, depression-related diseases, which is all on the increase, diabetes on the increase. We have extremely good product, generic drugs which can be sold in the market, but the approval procedure is a little more complicated. There is something called the SFDA, which is the Chinese version of Food and Drug Administration. You have to go through an SFDA process, which many of our companies have succeeded. Aurobindo Pharma actually had they were making APIs there. But most Indian majors are present in China. They're trying to explore the market. Some of them have actually filed for molecules to be for licenses. Exhibition participation is something which our companies are not looking at. China has a very sophisticated exhibition industry. For each product, there are several kinds of exhibitions of various levels. So it is important to go to exhibitions to display your products, and over a period of time we have seen that more and more companies, even textile machinery exhibition, there's something called a textile machinery exhibition which is held every year. There are now more and more companies from Coimbatore going there, up to 50-40 companies go. Everyone is selling because our companies produce value added items which they are able to sell, and it's generally the perception is that you cannot, it's the manufacturing hub and it's not possible to sell anything, but the effort has to be made, and participation in exhibition is a very important aspect of this. Trade disputes is something which concerns a lot of people, and I was told that there are many companies perhaps present here at this audience who would also have a trade dispute related issue. It is always good when you're doing trade, when you start business in China, it is always good to get in contact with one of the Government of India offices there. We have the embassy, we have 2 consulates, CII is present and is very active, FICCI is present in Beijing. We are all engaged in the business of helping Indian business establish themselves in China, look for opportunities. Because trade dispute is such a big issue in a big city like Shanghai, the government has actually set up an arbitration commission. But you can go to the arbitration commission only if you have an arbitration clause in your original agreement. So we advise all Indian companies to have an arbitration clause in your agreement so that it is easier to deal with that business. We ourselves, the consulate, and the embassy, we help Indian businesses whenever they come to us for trade disputes. And in China, there is something called a CCPIT, which is a semi-government body which exists at all levels, where if you have a trade dispute, we can approach them, and we have found them to be extremely helpful. If there is a complaint against a Chinese company that they have either not delivered on the specifications that they promised in the agreement, or the check bounced, we write to the CCPIT. CCPIT calls in the manager of the Chinese company and gives him a deadline that you settle this with your Indian counterpart within so many days. And we have had quite a bit of success in solving a lot of trade disputes. So if there are businessmen here, do make use of what facilities are available, and it is always good to have a lawyer check your documents. It is there are n number of consultants. We ourselves have lists of lawyers who have a good track record, and it is always good to get your documents checked. Lack of knowledge about the market is, of course, something about which, again, the consulates, embassy can help, CII can help. I think FICCI, CII, everybody has a China cell nowadays, and all our chambers have become very active on this. Besides which, I think state governments are now very active. We directly deal with a lot of state governments, particularly Gujarat, I must say, has been extremely active, and we are always, whichever consulate you deal with is always ready to give information. Coming to investments, it is always the general theory going around is that to deal with the trade imbalance, it is important that we go in for attract Chinese investments. In fact, the film that you saw, this was made basically to instill a degree of, confidence in other Chinese investors that India is a friendly market, it has investment friendly policies, and please come and invest in India. These figures are not very, these are in a way a little misleading because it's only up to December, and as you can see that the numbers are very small, only about a little more than $400 million on both sides. Chinese investments have outpaced our investments. But the interesting thing is that total Chinese investments to the rest of the world is $1.89 trillion in 2011. So we are actually able to attract a very, very small fraction of what is China's external investment. And in China's 12th five-year plan, going out, investing abroad is a goal that is there. I mean, besides FDI, attraction of FDI, which has always been, the economy has grown on FDI. Outbound investment is a target in their 12th five-year plan. So, and it's our endeavor that when this flow of capital takes place, at least a part of it should come to India for investments into India. Project earning, actually I got better figures later. Up to December 2012, the Chinese project contracts were $55 billion, not the figure that has been given. It's a huge amount. And the turnover that they actually took back was $14 billion. I must explain what this project earning is. Project earning is basically the